All right, I think we're live. All right, and so for those of you who are coming live, we'll give everybody just a second, but we're going to jump right in to this topic. And appreciate everybody for coming back. Those who have been following us. This is episode 4 from Data Nerds, and we've been playing with the title of this podcast, and it's been Data Nerds along the way, but we kind of added the voice of data to it. And we thought that as we kind of go through this, we really want to be able to understand what it means to give voice to data within your organization and what that entails. So again, we thought it was a neat name. So very excited to be able to kind of hopefully introduce it. Hopefully this one will stick, and we'll continue on with it. So welcome today. I brought Aaron Fuller on, who's worked with us on a number of projects. I'll introduce him in a second. But we've picked the topic again today. We're staying kind of with the theme that we've been doing in this, and with kind of where the value for data exists. And this is something I know Aaron and I are both very passionate about in the work that we do. And if you've seen some of the past ones, you'll see that's kind of centric to some of the topics that we did. So we've actually originally wanted to do a conversation on data governance, but I think with some of the projects we're working on and just kind of the flow of how these are going, we thought this would be a really good one to do for us. But this is something that, again, Aaron and I have worked on business dimension modeling. The title of the episode is Architecting Data with Business DNA. Again, how do you take data and all the formats that it's in and be able to architect solutions that really reflect your business, and more than that, meet the goals of your business? We've been able to successfully do that at a number of different clients we've worked with in the past, and wanted to kind of have that conversation. We're always welcoming any comments that you guys have, or whether it's on LinkedIn or however you guys want to reach out to us. We'd love to hear people's input on this. But welcome, Aaron. Glad to have this conversation. And
thanks for having me.
You bet. So Aaron comes from you've had a long career in this area. So
almost 25 years. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I've been there with you in different capacities. I know you've worked in a number of different companies, accidental fund insurance, Code Green, and you have your own practice as well, which is what you're working in now, and how we've been working together mostly through that. So excited to have you on. I know you do a number of things in this capacity, from director of data and business intelligence, from data architect, and I know your passion though is on the data modeling side, and you do a number of things. Like you said, we were talking about data governance and things that are kind of part of that, being able to understand the ROI of data projects and things, and other things we've talked about. But I know kind of your central passion is kind of stems from that data modeling side of things. How do we model data in a data warehouse or wherever it's at to be able to really reflect the business and allow all users to be able to use the data, not just the tech users, the people who know the databases, but business users and everybody within the organization to really get the value from it. So Aaron, I'll give you just a second here in a minute after I kind of introduce the topic, and you can kind of if you want to add some more to your introduction. But really excited to be able to jump into this topic with you. So Aaron and I were actually introduced from a lady named Laura Reeves that I had worked with on a couple of projects, and Amtex had, and Aaron had, I think you kind of worked with her as a mentor of ways, but Laura has since retired, and I think Aaron's kind of taken over some of the flame of what she's done. And she has a long career in the data warehousing area, a pioneer in this industry. And she kind of, she was the one who pioneered the whole ideal of business dimension modeling, right, Aaron? And through some of her books and things that she had written. And so being able to kind of put that into play has been neat, and for me to understand. I'll let you kind of introduce that full topic as soon as I'm quiet here in a second. And but all of it, again, centers around how do we have all this data in our business and be able to create a model that reflects that? How do we understand the different processes within the business, the goals we're trying to achieve, the different people who are involved in it, and really build a model that reflects that, and not just what data is in there and how can we get it to people in the easiest format. So with that being said, Aaron, I'm gonna be quiet and let you kind of introduce yourself and the topic as well, and then we'll kind of get into some questions back and forth that we have on this.
Sure. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, as you were saying, I've been involved in this business for a long time. Started out around Y2K, actually working on converting old mainframe reports over to a client server environment, or Oracle environment,
Wow.
Right around Y2K. So that's kind of my vintage there. But a few years after that, I started getting involved in data warehousing when I worked for Accident Fund Insurance Company, and we just had a data dumping ground, a data junkyard. We didn't have a data warehouse, and we needed structure and governance, and we needed a single version of the truth when it came to the data about our business. So that's what led me down the data warehousing and BI and analytics track from starting out and just kind of general reporting. And I was lucky enough to be mentored by Laura Reeves back in those days. 2003 to 2005 kind of era was when I was working on my first data warehouse with her advisement, and it worked out really well. I mean, it was fantastic, and we followed this process that she had come up with called business dimensional modeling, which involves a document format and diagram format, but it's all very simple, and it's very oriented around communicating with your business. She invented this, probably 30 years ago now.
Yeah.
And it was because she just wasn't satisfied with using ERDs and entity relationship diagrams, which are our standard kind of diagrams for database design. She wasn't satisfied with the way that she was able to use those when talking to business people. They look too technical. There is too much information on one sheet, frankly, to be digested well, which I think was a breakthrough of her approach, which is to put the information about your data model in more digestible bits, page by page. Be willing to have a multi-page document in order to really describe things in a way that people could understand. And in general, it wasn't a good conduit for the kinds of conversations she was trying to have, because very early on in her career, she realized that when she was designing databases that had to have BI analytic solutions on top of them, that she had to be working with business people. That is not optional. We can't just go in and say, well, let's design a data warehouse and only ever talk to people in IT. Yep. For example, you and I certainly know that from our projects. We have to connect with the people who are going to make use of this data and the people who create the data through their business processes, and then that whole cycle of then evaluating how successful their business processes are. That's what we're trying to tie into, and technology is simply an enabler of that. It's not the what, it's the how. We need to understand the what, and that's what the business dimensional model is all about. We have to understand what are the business dimensions and the groups of facts about our business, those numbers, and which numbers go together, right? Which numbers go together, and how do they tie to those major concepts of our business, like customer and product and staff and location and these various dimensions of the business. So that's what this is all about, and it's all about being business oriented, Tim. Like you were saying, we have to build for business value. We're not just building for the sake of saying we have a data warehouse or a data lake or a lake house or whatever we want to say that we have. That actually matters very, very little. What matters is, can the business get nice, clean data to answer their questions? And then can they use that to look forward from there into the future in valuable ways? That's where we prove our value, not in just being able to check off a box that says we have this particular thing, So data is an asset, and it's not the containers that are the asset, it's the data content itself.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned starting with the why. And I think most of us in the industry have heard of Simon Sinek's, his TED Talk on starting with the why, and I have his book on it and everything, and still listen to some of the stuff. He's very great point on being able to start with why instead of the what, and I forget the other who out there, understanding what you're trying to do. And we talked about this on some of the past podcasts we've had. A lot of people are focused on, we've got this data request. People are telling us we need to get these data models so we can futurize our data structure and architecture and make sure that we're set up for the future, and which are very admirable things to do, and everybody should be doing them. But then they jump straight into that without going back to the business and really understanding what the business is wanting to accomplish. Because again, they look at what their job is from an IT perspective, from a technical perspective, and they're golden with that. But then being able to tie that back to the business side is sometimes takes a little bit of a jump to get there. And conversations that are sometimes obviously more difficult to have because you got to get time from people who are involved in the business. But that starting with that, being able to even understand the goals of the business. And we can go on websites. A lot of businesses have their goals out there on the website, even starting with something as simple as that. But really understanding what the business is wanting to accomplish and making sure that you're aligning with that. It's something that will, number one, if you're in this field, it's going to make sure that you're talking to the business who are the ones who continue to run the business and sign the checks and get the new projects and improve the new projects. You're in line with yourselves with them. You're making sure that the business is moving forward, so you put yourself in that light. Should be a no-brainer, like you said, and like you said, Laura had this concept many years ago, but we seem to just in the last 5 years or so, at least for myself, getting where this is a common conversation. So I am glad to see that it's progressed to that point. I think some of it is through, some failed projects, along the way where data was brought into some architecture and it really didn't get to the point that it was being used in the way that people wanted to. And I know there's statistics out there, and we put them out there ourselves. Some of our stuff. I think even in the last podcast we talked about 44% of, I may be remembering that statistic wrong, but it was somewhere in the 40s of data and analytic projects fail to meet their value that the company has for it. And a lot of that's because they're not getting this stuff in the hands of the people who can really use it, and they're not getting it to in a way that they can use it. So we've seen this as a great bridge of really identifying, the processes, the goals, the things within the business that you're trying to accomplish, and aligning it with that and making sure that this data, once it's in this final structure, is in the format that everybody can consume it, not just the people who really understand the data. And I know that goes back to really being able to do some work up front to make that happen. But the amount of the jump in success you get by doing it that way is phenomenal. So with that being said, from a business dimension model, how do you adapt? And I guess you can go back and say, okay, as the business changes, we have to be able to adapt the models, or is that the case? How does it kind of work as businesses change, which they all do? And how does in this type of format, how does the actual structure of the architecture, does it change? Does it have to change, or is it built to kind of deal with those changes along the way?
Well, it would be a lie to say that a dimensional model doesn't require care and feeding over time.
Mm-hmm.
If I made you a dimensional model that was flexible enough to not have to change when your business changes, then it would be too general and too abstract for you to make good use of it. And that's the trade-off that we deal with data solutions, and is the more flexible they are, the more abstract they are, the less usable they are. So that's true to some degree of dimensional models. So there is some change that will be required over time, but the idea is that we set it up so that the heart of the thing, the most important pieces, are the pieces that probably aren't ever going to change about your business. You're going to have products, and products are going to have these levels of tiers that you use to describe them. These things aren't going to change. What products you have, now that's something that's subject to a great deal of change, right? But the fact that you have products and that you categorize them in a certain way, that can live much longer. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So we try to build things in a way where it's useful from an analysis standpoint, it's specific enough to be useful, but it's also flexible enough to take on the various ideas, like our types of customers might change over time. Yes, but you'll have a concept called customer type, right?
Yep.
And that customer type can have different data values in it as time goes on. So we absolutely try to design to futurize it as much as possible, but realizing that if fundamental changes occur in the business, if this insurance company decides to start selling soap, our data warehouse is probably going to change a great deal, right?
Yeah.
But to the degree that we could design it up front so that if they choose to sell a new insurance product, we're ready for that, we will do that,
Yeah, and in all reality, if they go through such a major change, like you said, insurance company decides to sell soap, the whole data is going to change anyway. So no matter what structure you have, it really is not going to matter at that point. But I agree.
Exactly. You're following the data content. You're
Yeah.
following the data content and the data meaning, wherever that might be taking you. The idea is not to introduce so much extra overhead to get there, and so to have a cleaner, more direct path between this is what the business needs and what the way they think about things to this is how the data gets fed to them, right? That's what we're after.
Yeah. And before we jumped on, I know you and I were just having a conversation about when you talk about kind of the different technologies and stuff behind that, and you mentioned that those things will change. I know you are, and we are as well. And we always have to look at every situation, every company, and what they're trying to do, and what fits that. But data warehouse has kind of been a term that's been around for years. And I think some people have gotten a little bit, I don't want to say gotten a little bit bored with it. Maybe it's the right term, because you and I feel like they're still very, very effective for what they're trying to do. But then now you have data lakes, you have data, you can name it. There's all kinds of different data. There's even data lake houses by some of the other companies who have kind of jammed together a lake house and a data warehouse. And I know that I'm generalizing that way too much for those companies who are doing that. But what are your thoughts on somebody is looking at this, and I love it. We were talking before, and I said maybe we need to do a session on data warehouses bringing sexy back, because we still talk about where these things still really apply and are making huge impacts on business. And we talked a little bit about how many users are going to have a data warehouses versus data lakes and those type of things. So what are your thoughts on behind the actual technologies that will go behind or into the architecture for a business dimension modeling architecture? Because it's just about the architecture, it's not the actual technologies in it.
That's right. I mean, this is it's about how to view your business in terms of its metrics and its dimensions. It's not specific to a technology,
Yeah.
but when it comes to implementing this, I have to say that the vast majority of the time we do take a BDM and we implement. At least we start by implementing what would be considered a fairly traditional data warehouse. Now, that may be on more modern uh, uh, architecture, certainly on in the cloud, and various cloud services that are available to run data warehouse databases. But in the end, it's fact tables and dimension tables implemented in a data warehouse type schema. Now, from there, a lot of times I see companies, once they've achieved a lot and gotten a lot of the value out of that data warehouse layer, then they're usually ready to move on to building out a data lake and enabling their data scientists.
Yes.
But what I really want to make sure people understand is that the data warehouse is for everybody. Everyone from, an executive assistant to a senior manager or a VP to a data scientist, they're all going to make use of that data warehouse.
Yep.
The data lake is pretty much just for the data scientists.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are able to go in there and fish out, the data. Everybody else needs to have the sushi already made for them and served, right?
Yeah.
Data scientists want to fish their own right out of the lake, because they're looking for what nobody's found before. They're looking for the combination of data insights that will lead to a predictive capability for the organization that it's never had before. This is
Yep.
not the same type of activity as going in and saying, what is my trend looking like for sales? The trend of sales needs to be served up from a data warehouse or something like it. That's not to say there aren't some newer ideas about, from a technology standpoint, how to implement those facts and dimensions.
Yeah.
There's data virtualization potentially can take on much of the load at least in some cases, but still in the majority of cases, I'm finding that people are settling on and very happy with batch loaded data warehouses. Now,
Yeah.
these batches have gotten a lot faster throughout my career. When I started my career, it was pretty common for people to have data warehouses that were loaded weekly or monthly. And now it's pretty common, the most common is daily. And then it's actually very common that they be loaded many times per day, sometimes every 15 minutes,
Yeah.
and that works fine. There's ways to make all of that work. But in the end, the ability to lay out the facts and dimensions in tables and physically store them, take snapshots of that data so that you can see what history looked like as of a point in time, which, by the
Yep.
way, is something that a data virtualization tool simply can't do for you. because it works on existing data. It doesn't really create its own data in that sense. So anyway, I find that's a big part of the stack. Successful data stack is a data warehouse for almost everyone. Now, that I think the reason that the hype cycle has left it behind is just because it's such a well-established discipline,
Yeah.
but so is carpentry, and we're not getting away from having people pound nails
Yeah.
into wood,
Yeah. Like that.
so
Yeah, like, and I still think we need to do that. I think that would be a fun, data warehouse, bringing sexy back. I think that would still be a good. And we're not proposing that every project should go to a data warehouse at all. There, I think, again, architects, especially on our team, and Aaron as well. I know you see, like you were saying, there's places for all these different things. It's really digging into what are you trying to do. No, so if you're like some of our clients, retail customers who have, analytics applications in front of the people in the stores, the actual people who are in front of the customers, who have no clue about what the data is behind it. They're going to have something that is definitely reflects what they do on a day-to-day basis in the business, that they do on a day-to-day basis. And we're working with one that's in the transportation, where they actually have analytics in the trucks that they have and those type of
yeah.
things. So there still is those people who are the data analyst, and those people who are the data scientists, and those people who are doing other things that may need another avenue to do that. But I still think that even in those, that it still needs to kind of go back to the business at some point, even if it's not a pure reflection like it would be in a structured and governed way inside the data warehouse. It doesn't mean that it has to completely forget about what the business is about. It should not. Um,
No, that's just
yeah,
it. And that's why we do the BDM anyway,
yeah,
because we want to go through this process of understanding what are your metrics, and then how do you slice and dice them in order to try to meet your goals,
yeah,
and that's true whether we're implementing real-time analytics in a truck, retail analytics in a store, or your standard management reporting
management. Yeah,
and dashboards that might run off a more traditional data warehouse structure.
yep,
All those things require that view of what are the facts and dimensions of the business. And so, yeah, I've had a lot of success with this over the years. Definitely encourage people, especially just be talking with your business.
yeah,
That's the other thing is don't wall yourself off in tech world. If you do that, the best you can possibly do is rebuild something that already exists. Reverse
hmm,
engineer the old solution and build a new version of it. And that's not the way to add the most value to your business. So reach out to them and get to know those business people really well, and deliver for them, and they'll open up to you more and more and more over time.
yep. And I think that's key. And to make sure we don't leave the data scientists people behind. AI and ML continues to be forever. And to me, honestly, when you get on that subject, it's still my thoughts are on AI and ML is very important. But at this point, where it's at, it's really just part of data and analytics. I mean, I mean, I know it still kind of has its own separate glamour to it, but AI and ML have been around so long, and now I know they're getting to be where they're much more generally usable. You don't have to have a Python developer who understands how to create these deep models. Not saying that is not still a real thing. There still are people who just do that, but being able to implement AI and ML, in some use cases has become much more standardized. Where people like me who aren't deep scientists could actually go in there and actually do it and understand it. And even to the point where I always find it a little bit creepy, a little bit maybe, but it's just the way things are going to. If I'm walking through a store and my phone starts blowing up with things that I may be interested in based off of my past history of buying things, where I'm at in the store, those things are hugely profitable to a retail company to be able to bring something to somebody's attention and do that type of stuff. So from a business dimension modeling standpoint, what do you see the impacts of AI and ML having on it? As it continues to develop and grow as well.
Well, I think that if it only the AI machine learning, these technologies, they run as well as the data that they run off of.
Yeah.
Okay. So I feel like the question of how well the technology works there, and how well it's going to work for your organization,
Yep.
lots of times comes down to how good's the data that you're going to run it off of. And it's amazing how traditional sounding the conversation gets real quickly then, because now you're talking about master data management and data warehouse dimensions and facts and things, and you're right back into the same types of needs that you see from BI, traditional BI, or from other kinds of analytics. So I think that what this will all do, what's the impact here? The impact is BDM and or having some conceptual model of what data looks like for your business
Yeah.
becomes even more important as you're getting into trying to do such fine-tuned things with your data. Things like making sure you know who that customer is, and making sure that you're confident what kind of notification you want to push Tim that
Yeah.
won't annoy him, that will actually entice him and make him thankful for that feature as opposed to creeped out by it, right? That could come down to how good your conceptual model of your data is, how well
Yeah.
you've organized your customer data, you know?
Yeah, and going back to, that example, if I'm in the produce area and my phone starts beeping at me saying, hey, olive oil's on sale for blah blah blah, one of them that I commonly use, then it's going to do more to confuse me than anything, because I'm not where that stuff is at, and it's going to make me really question the value of the data that we're getting with this. Or if it tells me I need to buy, nails or something like that, and I'm not even in a store that has that. There's lots of things from a data quality standpoint that still has to be there. Or like you said, it's gonna, it'll kind of ruin that confidence that you have within the data and what it's kind of
Yeah. How
leads you
about
to.
this? How about this one? It's probably a good idea to know who's a vegan, you know?
Yeah, that was the other example. Yeah, or
Like,
if
you
I
don't
was
want to
very,
push the pork chops when it's the wrong person to push that to,
yeah,
you know?
absolutely. Yeah, it may turn you off from the store all along. Absolutely.
Right.
And we know that that's a common thing from a quality standpoint, is being able to identify who the person is or who the entity is within the organization. That's a big thing with MDM, which I know we've worked on some assessments and things in that area, is really being able
Yeah,
to
we
tie
have.
this down to. But if that part is missing, you can do actually damage to your reputation with the people who are using your data, and maybe even the store itself. Some people
Well, the
take that
truth
very
is that
personal.
exactly the way we care about our data is the way we care about people. When you think about
Yes.
it, if you care as an organization about treating people well, you have to care about treating your data well. And part of that is to one of the ways we treat our data well is to know our data well and know how it should be
Yep.
and what's good enough and all of these things. That it's really this conceptual exercise. It's almost philosophical. Actually,
Yeah.
that's why I like it so much. It's very cerebral,
Yeah.
to go. And I think it is fun work. So if you've never tried it before and you'd like to try to work on conceptual, data modeling, I encourage it, because it not only is it good for your business, it's good for your brain, and you'll think about your business and how it works in a more holistic fashion if you personally are the one who goes and does this. I find it so interesting to learn about different businesses, and
Yeah.
then figure out how to conceptualize those businesses as dimensional models through this process. It's very gratifying, and it's very valuable to my clients.
And it's almost a way, Aaron, just almost teaching yourself to. I think most people are able to do that. I think some of it's just making that jump to actually doing it and teaching yourself to think things that way.
Mhm.
It's not a capability. And I think the more you learn about a business, the better you are at doing that. So just learning business concepts, and I've got a book called "What the CEO Wants You to Know," and it's a great book about telling you, if you're in an organization, you need to understand about the business or the organization, because they're all different. But if these aren't hard concepts to learn, it's just being able to make that jump of, I know I'm a technical person and my job is to, create this great architecture that's going to be able to handle, perform, and do all the things I need to do. But make that jump from that to thinking about, okay, so but how is this going to affect the actual business and the organization? It's just a mind switch, I think, and a lot of times of people making that. Most people, especially if you're in an organization, you're going to understand it. It's just deciding to actually make that jump and tie the two together, because we get so tied up in the way that we are used to thinking about things. So,
Yeah.
it's
Well, it's a way to be very valuable to your organization, is
yes,
to be one of those bridge people,
yep,
between the technical and business side, and be able to translate, and not only just translate, but bring together the thinking of those sides of things. And that's when there's no gulf left between the thinking of the business and the technology people, despite the fact that they speak somewhat different languages and work in somewhat different ways, that's when the greatest value gets created, right? You can
Yeah.
be one of those people for your business that builds a bridge and draws people together.
Yeah, completely agreed. And we're getting close to time, so I wanted to, because one of the key things I want to keep in this, these interviews and this whole podcast, live interviews, things that we have going on, is just how does this apply to real businesses that people are doing, and not just conceptually. I know we've talked about a lot of concepts, which I think very much go down to the real concept level or the real modeling level. But we may end this if you can kind of give us specific, what is one of your favorite examples that you've had in the past that you've been able to take a lot of stuff that we've been talking about and actually put that into action and some of the outcomes of that. And you can be as vague or as general as you want to. I know we don't want to go too deep on some of the clients and client names, but I'd love to hear
Oh, sure.
experiences.
Well, I actually just finished up a project where we didn't do the entire a business dimensional model for the entire business. We did it was for a software company, and we did it for their revenue modeling and for their
Yeah.
sales process. You know, and we laid out for them what are the things that happen in the basically the transactions that build your revenue. What are the things that happen in the sales process, the events, you know? And actually we went a little further than that and blended in marketing events so that we could kind of see
Yep.
more the beginning of the pipeline, and then we came up with summary level fact table designs in this way that would meet their dashboard and reporting needs, and kind of filled in all the dimensions of what are all the different attributes of your customers and of your products and this sort of thing, and kind of took it in just a really focused 5-week project.
Yep.
And coming out the other end of that, they are now building ETL and populating the tables, and within a couple of sprints for them, they expect to have some functionality in production. So that's an example of a really rapid deployment of improved functionality. Now, this was a team that was really ready to go, and devoted a lot of time within that 5 weeks, obviously. But we got a ton done in that kind of amount of time. And we did it largely because we had some really focused interaction from the business. We
Yeah.
had a fantastic guy that was on the business side responsible for all the revenue reporting, and we had a woman who was great from the business side who was responsible for all of the sales pipeline reporting. And they were just 100% all in with it, and
Yep.
said, okay, how can we help design it? How can we help govern it once it's there? And I think they've got a bright future ahead if they keep building their data warehouse solution up 5 weeks at a time like that, right?
Yeah.
And I trained their people so that they can start doing it themselves.
And that's a
So,
great thing to point to make, because a lot of people, again, know that one of the things that data warehouses, at least the concept, kind of gets a bad name, is they'll say they take so long to implement. When you look at doing business dimension modeling, to be able to get to the point, especially with a group that's going to work with you, get you the people you need and have those conversations, it doesn't take a long time to get to that point where you have the architecture built for that. A lot of the times that if you're looking at, if you have like one that we're starting on now with another client, it is a 12-month project probably, but it's because we have a number of different things. But the key part of that as well is we're going to be showing and bringing in value along the way. It's not like a big bang where we do all this work and then 12 months down the road, here's your data warehouse. There's a number of entities within that we want to be able to get into the data warehouse, and we'll, as we start building those out, step by step, we'll start putting those out there for people to start using. So there is a very quick return on that along the way, and I think that's some of it, again, just how you manage your projects. But I think they do
build
get a bad
small,
rap.
and you build small and valuable, and
Yes.
iterate as fast as you can while still delivering quality, but build small and valuable.
Yes.
Yep.
And I've appreciated some of the work that we've done, and going back to some of the points that we make around value, and being able to actually understand the ROI. And I know you do a lot of that, and I've been very fortunate to learn some of that with you. of really understanding the value. So that goes back to your point you're making. If I can understand the ROI of being able to get this entity with inside of the data warehouse, these dimensions and attributes, and if I can get that into there, this is the value I get from that, and be able to prioritize that way, you really start showing that value immediately. So great stuff. And I know we're kind of up on time, but
Yeah.
we could talk about this all day, and we have, I think, too many times. But we've got other topics, I think, Aaron, that we'll want to talk about as well. Again, I mentioned before, our initial conversation, we said, hey, let's cover data governance. It was something that we had been talking about as well. So we'll come back with
Yeah, I
that.
work on that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's hot nowadays for
it
sure.
is.
And
It
it's
is.
another thing that's been around a long time, and maybe is getting the real permanent importance that it deserves now, you know?
Yeah. Yep. No, I agree. So we've got some other things that I still keep saying. We'll come back to the data warehouse, bringing sexy back. The other one we mentioned again before we were, jumped on here live was, the data lakes and all the different data architectures out there, and do almost like a Mythbusters on that. We may figure out what format to do. I think that would be good for people to understand how these different technologies, we covered it a little bit today, but to have a full session on how these different technologies really tie into an overall modern data architecture, and when one makes sense versus when it doesn't, and go beyond the hype. And we all know the hype of all these terms that we have in our world. And so that may be fun. So we'll kind of talk about that. But I appreciate everybody who jumped on live, or if you're listening
Yeah.
on
Thanks,
demand.
everyone.
Love to hear your feedback on this. Thanks, Aaron, for just having another conversation with me. I think we have these, it seems like,
Yeah.
once a week or so. We just decided to record this one. So,
Yeah,
so
exactly. All
all
right.
right.
Good to talk
Appreciate
to
it.
you, Tim.
And we'll talk to everybody soon. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Bye.